So, folks, I just want to talk to you briefly and really hammer home that Donald Trump is not having a good time. And when I say that, I also mean that MAGA is having a real rough go of it. Uh, in response to Rob Reiner's tragic murder, allegedly at the hands of his own son, and by the way, the murder of Rob Reiner's wife at the hands of their own son. Well, Donald Trump issued one of the most heinous statements I've ever seen a president put out to the general public. Essentially, blaming the murder on Rob Reiner suffering from Trump derangement syndrome and saying that because Rob Reiner was not a fan of Donald Trump, he got stabbed to death because people were sick of hearing about how bad Donald Trump was. It's the most deranged, lunatic level behavior I've ever seen. Well, that has not gone unnoticed by conservatives, which is bizarre. Usually there's a very high tolerance for Donald Trump, what Donald Trump says and does. They have been hanging on his word as gospel. And, well, I mean, this is like some examples, right? Reiner hated Trump, so brace yourself for some nasty comments coming from the MAGA verse. We do not operate that way. That's the difference. Nothing but thoughts and prayers from our side. I just want to make one thing clear. This post should never have been sent out. Yeah, here's the full statement. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling, but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy with his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace. This is some fucking crazy shit. This is just crazy. And one might say, oh, but Jack, it's not that widespread. You won't see people on the right celebrating the horrific murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, compared to the left's reaction to Charlie Kirk's murder. A few losers that are, but nothing like 9 out of 10, as you said. Y'all realize, when they're saying this to each other, when they're saying this in MAGA circles, only losers would make fun of Rob Reiner for not liking Trump after he was tragically murdered. And then Donald Trump comes out and does exactly the thing they've all been telling one another is loser behavior. It genuinely hurts him in their eyes, right? Here's Thomas Massie. And, you guys might be thinking Thomas Massie is a Republican, and he is. He's a hateful piece of shit. But the fact that Thomas Massie, a Republican in Congress, has broken from Trump on the Epstein files and has broken from Trump here, the coalition of Republicans elected into office is fracturing faster and faster. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene heading out the door, Nancy Mace heading out the door. You got people not seeking re-election next year. It's coming apart at the seams. And here's Thomas Massie. Regardless of how you felt about Rob Reiner, this is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered. I guess my elected GOP colleagues, the VP and White House staff, will just ignore it because they're afraid. I challenge anyone to defend it. Representative Mike Lawler, who is also conservative and part of the Republican Party. This statement is wrong. Regardless of one's political views, no one should be subjected to violence, let alone at the hands of their own son. It's a horrible tragedy that should engender empathy and compassion from everyone in our country, period. These are, not the biggest signs of fracture, but you need to understand it as, the beginnings of something. What has held the Republican coalition together behind Donald Trump has been that they see it in their best interest politically to back Donald Trump. And what you're seeing here with independent statements from different members of Congress who are and have been MAGA in the past, what you're seeing is these people coming to the conclusion that being behind Donald Trump, that's not serving their political interests anymore. That's not serving them politically, which indicates that the break in the Republican Party is real and it's big. Okay? Now, let's take another look here. Here's Jack Posobiec. Libs are trying to community note this with Trump's post. Where's the celebration in Trump's post? He isn't celebrating, he is warning. How the fuck does Trump know why Reiner's son killed him? As a 3-time Trump voter, his comment disgusts me. Like, dude voted for Trump 3 times, and even he's going like, nah, I'm done. Here's Sage Steele. This tweet is so disappointing and so unnecessary. It's comments like this to take away from the countless great things real Donald Trump does for America. And like, yeah, they think it's bad, you know? Latzia, yes, we should be worried about what comes after the death of MAGA, and that is precisely why one of the things we need to do, and we need to push our politicians to do, is to not make the same mistake that they made last time after the Trump presidency was done, which is not hold anyone accountable. We need to hold everyone that enabled this accountable. We need to like prosecute all ICE agents. We need to dismantle ICE. We need to like make sure that we prosecute Donald Trump. And if we are unable to get a like conviction, then we need to hand him over to the Hague. Like, we need to like make sure that there is an accountability here. Like, part of the reconstruction that needs to happen in the wake of Donald Trump and MAGA is a meticulous deconstruction of all of the systemic failures that made MAGA possible in the first place. Okay? So that's kind of my stance. Aye, Captain, I'll be at my local Dem meeting in February, first quarterly meeting here. Latvia, fuck yeah. Let's get out there and let's do some shit. I'm so proud of you guys when you guys get involved. It's genuinely really inspiring. I mean, like, guys, you're even getting Autism Capital, like, one of the worst accounts on Twitter. Rare Trump L. This seems cruel and unnecessary. I'm genuinely... Here's Gad Sad. I fully understand that Mr. Reiner was unhinged in his delusional hatred of POTUS, but I think that it might have been best to simply say RIP or nothing at all. Believe me, I am all for the honey badger mindset. Like, even these people who are like, I normally love liberal tears, but like, this is insane. And this, you know, you might be like, well, okay, Jack, that's a bunch of Twitter users. Surely institutional Republicans aren't calling him out. You know, like, we got a couple members of Congress. Guys, the National Review wrote a rebuke of Donald Trump. Trump's appalling Reiner reaction is a sign of something deeply wrong. For those of you who don't know, National Review is one of the most conservative outlets in the country that can still call itself even remotely mainstream. On the menu today, yes, we must talk about what President Trump posted on Truth Social about the brutal murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, and how Trump doubled down when asked about it Monday afternoon. We must talk about it because a lot of Americans are embarrassed by the president and for the president, and a whole lot of Americans would prefer to avert their eyes and pretend it didn't happen, but it did happen. We must talk about it because there are some Americans still so blinded by partisan animus and cult-like loyalty that their first instinct will be to defend the president's remarks. We will never become a better or more united country if we cannot point to indecent actions taken and statements made by those we agree with politically and say, this is wrong. This is something that decent human beings do not do. You must be better than this. Earlier this year, we went through a terrible trauma of watching Charlie Kirk get murdered right before our eyes if you were unlucky enough to encounter the unedited video. And then we got the second wave of horror watching lots of ordinary progressive Americans celebrate his death or attempt to justify his murder. Small acts of utterly unjustifiable and unnecessary cruelty. If you are bothered by the social media postings of random unknown Americans, but are willing to bend over backwards to excuse or justify the comments from the president, then you are a hypocrite of the highest order. Like, I'm sorry, but like the fact that National Review is putting this out there is fucking nuts. And not only that, Donald Trump, stark raving maniac. The president of the United States is a hateful, raging lunatic with all the empathy of Jeffrey Dahmer. Legendary Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner were found dead in their Brentwood home on Sunday. Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonnell said that officers responded to Reiner's home at around 3:40 p.m. The couple's son, Nick Reiner, was found in South Los Angeles near USC, about 15 miles from the scene of the stabbing, and arrested at 9:15 p.m. The LA Times reported that the Reiners had injuries consistent with being stabbed, and that a family friend had said that Nick Reiner, who had struggled with addiction for years, was living in a guest house on his parents' property, and his mother had become increasingly concerned about his mental health in recent weeks. It's just about the saddest thing imaginable. And here's how the president responded Monday morning, and we'll spare you reading it again. Now the president of the United States does not need to weigh in on every murder in the country, even the shocking double murder involving a celebrity. The president had the option of writing nothing and raging about Reiner's alleged past transgressions privately. He also had the option of issuing some brief but appropriate statement. Despite our past disagreements, I am shocked to hear about the terrible deaths of the Reiners. I offer my condolences to their friends and family, etc. Instead, the man who currently has access to the nuclear button chose to characterize Reiner as unsuccessful and attributed his being stabbed to death as a criticism attributed his being stabbed to death to his criticism of Trump. The president suggested that Rob Reiner had driven his own son and murderer crazy, and in some ways implied that the Reiners had gotten what they deserved.
When I meet the small-fingered man, I will go up to him and say, "Hello, I am a fan of Rob Reiner. You killed my father, prepare to die.
I fucking love The Princess Bride, man. It still hurts my heart to talk about this story. It breaks my heart. I grew up watching that movie on VHS. At some point in the past, my parents had recorded it on a VHS tape off of television. So I still remember when I watch it now where all of the commercial breaks were. And I still find it a bit weird because I watched like the made for TV, not made for TV, the like TV edit, which was slightly different from the full edit. But I remember like the commercials that were in there and like the weird little audio quirks, and like it's just one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just so good. And by the way, the book is also very good. I would recommend you guys read the book. It's very fun. And then yesterday at the White House, when asked about his appalling reaction, the president chose to double down on it. Mr. President, a number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post? Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. Like, he's fucking talking about himself in the fucking third person, guys. Like, I'm sorry, if you're a conservative and you encounter someone who's just constantly talks about themselves in the third person, you would rightfully think that person is fucking not all there in the head. Okay? It's crazy. Yeah, he's talking about himself like he's a goddamn Muppet on Sesame Street. Or George Costanza from Seinfeld. He said he knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person. Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country. Like, that's not an answer to the question you were asked either, Mr. I'm going to refer to myself in the third person as president on the world stage. It's because he's like, he's circling the drain mentally. He's fucking gone. You know, Rob Reiner did just get stabbed to death alongside his wife by his own son. Most ordinary human beings could put aside their past differences for half a minute to express some sadness at his bloody murder. The president is incapable of doing that. I'll let you I'll let you decide whether the term psychopath or sociopath better describes the president's actions. On some level, we always knew the president was a nut of some kind, obsessed with grievances, vindictive and prone to posting late night tirades on social media, uninterested in details, erratic, impulsive, spiteful. But he fights. You can't run a company that enjoyed a wildly lucrative role conducting financial transactions among criminals, terrorist groups, and hostile states, and this president will pardon you, believing anything he's told you about how Joe Biden prosecuted him because he hated crypto. Or you can run a massive cocaine smuggling operation while being the president of a South American country, and this president will pardon you too, because he'll believe anything he's told about how your successful prosecution was a witch hunt. This president cannot discern moral right and wrong through a person's actions like a normal human being. Donald Trump's entire worldview of whether someone is a good person or a bad person depends entirely on whether that person offers praise or criticism of Trump. That and also whether he views them as like an extension of himself, right? Like if there's someone who like runs a scam or a scheme on a wide scale, he views that person as very successful and cool and wants to ingratiate himself with them, right? Like that's his MO. He thinks power and the ability to manipulate and abuse others is cool. It's why he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for over a decade. Best friends. But we'll get back to that. This is, I suspect, this is the person who runs the executive branch of the US government, and this is a formula for disaster. This is, I suspect, a factor in why the Trump administration is so friendly to the likes of Xi Jinping, and endlessly patient with Vladimir Putin, while sneering with contempt about leaders of European democracies. Trump does not see anything inherently morally objectionable about a brutal autocrat with a long history of egregious human rights abuses, but he will never forget or forgive a European leader who uttered a critical word in Le Monde. You can prefer the president's policies, you can say you're happy you voted for him over Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris. What you can't say is that Donald Trump is a good and decent human being. You can claim we've always known this, but there are Americans out there who have managed to convince themselves otherwise, just as there are Americans who've managed to convince themselves that Trump is a good Christian. Let us point out that the president is 79 years, 6 months, and 3 days old today. That's how old Joe Biden was in May of 2022. The White House and a lot of Trump fans did not like the New York Times article in late November that noted Trump keeps a shorter public schedule than he used to. Most of his public appearances fall between noon and 5 p.m. on average, and when he is in public, occasionally his battery shows signs of wear. Yes, Trump appears before reporters and answers questions way more frequently than Joe Biden did, and that's an unalloyed good thing. Yes, he has way more energy than Biden did at that age, but let's face it, that's not exactly the highest bar to clear. But elderly men sometimes get crankier and angrier, the more prone to outbursts. Trump's fan base would like to believe he's immune to the effects of age and that in the years to come, he's going to be what Biden never could be, an effective octogenarian president. Some people out there are going to argue that what the president says about a slain Hollywood director is not worth criticism, and it certainly isn't worth a whole newsletter's coverage. But all of the things a president must do in a day, a week, a month, a year, this is one of the easiest tasks. Temporarily put your sense of grievance and rage aside and make appropriate remarks and demonstrate basic human empathy. The guy who can't feel empathy for the Reiners being stabbed to death by their son is also not going to feel empathy for the people who contend the cost of living is still high, which is why the president keeps running around insisting the word affordability is a Democratic hoax and that Americans are living in a golden age. This is why his approval rating on the economy hit 31%. There are far-reaching consequences of having a president who is emotionally broken. Finally, this is another edition of the newsletter where a decent number of people will be much angrier at me for noticing what the president said and did than they will be at the president for what he said and did. Addendum, as of this writing, the perpetrator of the mass shooting at Brown University Saturday afternoon has not yet been caught. We've grown painfully used to mass shootings in this country, but we have not grown used to the perpetrators escaping without a trace, never encountering any cop, campus security guard, or an armed citizen. Over at the other Washington publication, I was asked how a Ivy League college campus can have more than 800 security cameras and yet somehow not have any good footage of the shooter. The failure of the university's system of surveillance cameras to generate more useful leads is a frustrating and infuriating wrinkle in an already frightening situation, and it raises the question, if a network of security cameras can't offer much help in a situation like this, why do we have them in the first place? The commenters over there, so far, largely believe this is a matter of Rhode Island not having enough gun control laws. The FBI has released more photos of the perpetrator, but those are not particularly illuminating images. And I just have to say, again, as a newsletter from the National Review, I want to say that this is another indicator that he is broken, and like the Republican coalition is broken. National Review is one of the most in the bag publications for Donald Trump. And not only that, we're not done with this segment yet. So here's Rand Paul talking about the push for mid-decade redistricting that, Donald Trump explicitly pushed for.
President Trump is threatening to primary, as you know, all of the Indiana lawmakers who voted against his redistricting plan, the new map that would have benefited Republicans. Do you support Republicans trying to redraw maps mid-decade?
It's this escalation on both sides. Both sides are doing it, and so is one side going to sit quietly and not do it? You can argue who started it, but I do think
it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump pushed the redistricting effort to shore up seats in Congress to try and maintain a Republican majority. That's who started it, at least in this particular round.
And this is on the negative aspect of both parties doing this. I think that it's going to lead to more civil tension and possibly more violence in our country. Because think about it, if 35% of Texas is Democrat, solidly Democrat, and they have zero representation, or like in my state, we're a very Republican state, but we have one Democrat area in Louisville, and we have a Democrat congressman. We could carve up Louisville and get rid of that one congressman, but how does that make Democrats feel? I think it makes them feel like they're not represented. And so I don't know. I think it's bad, but it's really not one party or the other doing it. It's both parties have been doing it since the beginning of time. But in general, when it becomes so extreme, like if California has no Republican representatives after this is done, or has one left, I think that makes people so dissatisfied they think, well, the electoral process isn't working anymore. Maybe we have to resort to other means. And I don't want that. And I think both parties it could happen to. But I think we need to be aware of and think about that before we do all of this.
And by the way, I just want to say, I agree with him on this. Gerrymandering destroys faith in civic ability to participate.
If only this could lead to criminal tension instead of civil.
Indeed, Sake Tanuki. Nekosaurus, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, raiders. Hello, Zula Goetia. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. Folks, go follow Nekosaurus. Excellent content creator. Excellent organizer. Let's go. Now, I want to say something that I've rarely said before. I agree with Rand Paul. When you do gerrymandering, it destroys faith in our electoral system. And it makes people who already feel pretty powerless feel even more powerless. It disincentivizes engaging in the system. And our system only works when we engage with it, right? And, I don't agree with him when he says both parties are doing it. The entire premise of, civil rights protections vis-a-vis, the Voting Rights Act was to prevent redistricting specifically along racial lines, which is what a lot of these states that have been looking at redistricting in favor of conservatives, they're relying on redistricting along racial lines, right? And the Voting Rights Act was supposed to bar that, but the Supreme Court essentially looked at new arguments and said, well, it's been a while. People aren't racist anymore. No one sees race anymore. And obviously, the states won't gerrymander along racial lines. And of course, now they're gerrymandering along racial lines in the South. And that's a huge problem. And it's one we're going to have to fix when we address fixing the court. When we address making sure that this court can actually function and maintain the rule of law.
I have to follow up with you because what you're saying is very significant. You're saying that you are concerned redistricting could lead to more political violence?
I'm concerned if there are no representatives, like no Republican representatives in California or no Democrats in Texas, that it will be so thoroughly one-sided that people will feel like their vote isn't counting. And so I think it's a mistake, but I'm not saying it's a mistake of the Republicans. I'm saying it's a mistake of both parties, and I don't know exactly how we de-escalate this, because once, Texas is done and changed 5 seats to be more Republican, California's going to do the same thing, and it's back and forth and back and forth. And how do you put the genie back in the box? I mean, how do you get back to detente? I mean, how do you do something better? But I think there is the potential that when people have no representation, that they feel disenfranchised, that it can lead and might lead to violence in our country.
All right, restricting.
It's true. But also keep in mind, Rand Paul is breaking from Donald Trump here as well, which is maybe less surprising than some people might think. But taken all together, we have a number of folks in Congress breaking from Donald Trump, essentially criticizing his ideas openly, saying that what he's doing is monstrous, getting out of Congress, refusing to run again. And on top of that, there's a ticking time bomb. Deadline for Justice Department to release Epstein files looms. Here's where things stand. By Friday, December 19th, Attorney General Pam Bondi must make the investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein publicly available in a searchable and downloadable format per the Epstein Transparency Act signed into law by President Donald Trump last month. The scope included in the scope of what must be made public are documents relating to Epstein's longtime confidant and former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving out a 20-year prison sentence for luring girls to be abused by Epstein over the course of a decade. Also, just want to add, Maxwell also engaged in abusing underage girls sexually. So she's also a sexual predator. Epstein, who himself pled guilty in 2008 to 1 count of soliciting prostitution and 1 count of soliciting prostitution from someone under the age of 18, died by suicide in a New York City jail cell while awaiting trial. It's unclear when exactly the records will be released and if the files will all be shared together. And I'm just going to say here, this is a goddamn time bomb. This is going to be one of those things. It's why earlier in stream, when we talked about Donald Trump running a blockade of Venezuela, one of the concerns was that on Friday, December 19th, when these files go up, he might begin military operations against Venezuela as a way to try and deflect from the story. It's
Ghislaine doesn't feel right. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk Lane sounds more fitting.
It does, but also I'm trying to be sensitive to the nature of the story. Donald Trump is I think it might be partly why he's so cranky. It might be partly why he's posting like nonstop. He might be quite worried about what is going to come out later this week. And of course, we have to talk about how the Democrats are handling this. And
people are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Chuck Schumer has a poor choice of words. Here we go.
President Trump, what are you trying to hide? President Trump, what are you trying to hide? That's the question the American people are asking.
We won't rest.
Now, over the past few weeks, Senate Democrats, including my colleagues here with me, have been preparing for every scenario. We're working with the victims' attorneys. We're working with legal experts. We're working with people very familiar with this case to ensure full compliance of the law. If the administration withholds some documents unlawfully, we will know. If they abuse narrow exemptions to hide the truth, we will know. And there will be serious legal and political consequences. This law passed with near unanimous support. The survivors deserve the truth, and the American people are demanding it. This isn't political. Democrats and
people are what? Earlier in the year, when people were protesting in Washington, D.C., Chuck Schumer came out and instead of saying people are really angry, he said,
people are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Like, just goddamn, what a weirdo.
Republicans agree. The American people deserve the truth.
I'm so worried these guys are going to fumble the bag. I mean, I have zero faith in Chuck Schumer to do anything right, but I think other members of Congress are going to pick up the ball and run for it. I'm looking at you, Bernie.
So Donald Trump, release the Epstein files. Stop hiding. Stop delaying. Come clean with the American people. And if you don't, the question will only get louder and louder and louder. Trump, what the hell are you trying to hide? Senator Wyden's done great work on the financial end of this and has been a great member of our team.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. No, Amy, you go first.
Now, please.
I
Amy goes next.
Go. You're closer to the microphone.
Thank my colleagues, and there are two cover-ups that need.
Can I just say, like, holy shit, these people are old. Like, no disrespect intended, but like, can we muster like a little bit of that arousal that Chuck Schumer talked about earlier this year? You know, like,
people are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Get like the president of the United States within days might be outed as a goddamn predatory pedophile, and like, you guys are just like, and you know what is Donald Trump hiding? We don't know. He was only best friends with the most infamous child sex trafficker of all time. What is he trying to hide? Release the files. Like, come on. Like, speak with a little bit of passion in your voice. You don't need to be, like, yelling. You don't need to be pounding the podium. But, like, speak with, like, some goddamn conviction.
To be discussed this morning. The first involves the Department of Justice, and that is urgent business that we're focused on this week. The second cover-up is being conducted by the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and it deals with the financial aspects of how the sex trafficking came to be. So let's talk about them.
Like, the thing is, this guy is conveying some, like, critical information, right? Which is that Scott Bessent has been sitting on financial information around the sex trafficking for literally the entire time he's been in power. And Democrats have been trying to get those records.
A real leader would call him a child fucker to his face and ask him how many he needed to violate to fill the empty hole left in him because his dad hated him.
I mean, I would settle for, like, at least half of that. But thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Like, the decorum around Donald Trump, a man with zero decorum, I don't understand it. But also, like, this guy is conveying important information that the Trump administration has just sat on regarding, like, how Jeffrey Epstein moved money around to move girls around. And, like, this is how he delivers that information.
One at a time. First, as Senator Schumer said, there's good reason to be skeptical of whatever spin the Trump administration puts out on Friday. Here's why. This wouldn't be the first time Bondi tried to trick the public with a binder full of chicken feed. That's what she did back in the spring, which infuriated MAGA voters. who took Trump and his cronies at their word that they'd release the files. Second, the cushy treatment by the Trump administration of Ms. Maxwell is totally unacceptable. She was right at the heart of the most notorious sex trafficking ring in modern American history. Despite that, Donald Trump himself said a pardon for Maxwell is on the table. Third, the Trump administration...
Yeah, honestly, like I'm sorry, if you're MAGA and you're not asking yourself, why is Donald Trump open to pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell? Why would he do that? Why on earth would he be remotely interested in that? She's raped children. Like, she helped traffic and groom the children. And like, Donald Trump is open to pardoning her? That alone should have been the moment where every single member of the MAGA movement knew for 100% certain that Donald Trump is implicated in all this shit, all of the worst of it. They ate that propaganda right up. They definitely did. It's crazy.
Administration did assign hundreds of FBI agents to look at the Epstein file, but it wasn't to hunt down any more pedophiles. It was really to comb through the files for Donald Trump's name. Why? To protect him from public scrutiny. From the beginning, that's what they focused on with respect to Epstein. So Trump and Bondi do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. Second...
Wait, it's just Besant? Besant? That's stupid. He's not French? That's stupid.
We need to look at what Scott Bessent and the Treasury...
God damn it, I've been saying it wrong for like a whole year.
Department is up to here.
It just looks like it should be pronounced Besant.
They've got another massive set of Epstein files.
All of their ties are off center. None of them care about presenting themselves for this.
It is a critical fight for transparency and to find out how this horrendous sex trafficking operation was funded. For nearly 4 years, Finance Committee investigators have been on this, and we have been following the money. And to do that, you've got to get access at the Treasury Department.
Look, I've been playing too much Expedition 33, all right? I'm pronouncing everything French.
To the records that we have seen. The staff of major Republicans have seen them, and the file is made up of thousands and thousands of bank documents. And my investigators say that it is a financial roadmap into how Epstein hurt so many families. It shows who was paying Epstein and where his money was going. It shows what banks enabled his trafficking despite evidence of money laundering and despite the knowledge that he was a sex offender. It shows payments that look like the result of blackmail. It shows big outflows of money to Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Russia.
That is true. I do like the blue of his suit and the purple of his sweater. But the tie is unforgivably off-center.
And it includes the names of women and girls. My investigators saw a large portion of these records in 2024 under the Biden administration, but the Trump administration is denying us the file today. It's important for the American people.
Yeah, no, the money trail is super important because we don't exactly know where Jeffrey Epstein got his money. And there has been speculation that a huge way that Donald Trump was involved with Epstein was in either providing funds directly for his operations or in helping funnel money to Jeffrey Epstein and his operations. And that could be exactly what Donald Trump does not want to have get out. Because, you know, he might be right that he didn't do anything to anyone underage, but he might very well have funded the man who trafficked those girls. And I guess we'll find out later this week.
People to find out how all of this was financed, and that means getting our hands on the file to investigate further. The Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Bessent, has refused now multiple times to hand it over to our investigators. Ridiculous excuses, again and again. So we have introduced legislation to compel him to turn this over to Senate investigators. And I will tell you that Epstein survivors are already filing suit, against banks because they think that this information is so critical to finding out how they were exploited. So it is time for the stonewalling to end. That's why I so appreciate what my colleagues have done to get this information out on Friday, and the administration is required by law to release the Epstein files at DOJ. I'm here to say it's got to be done at the Treasury Department as well, because we find in America you capture corruption by following the money. And that's what was so critical at this point to the second investigation. Thank you, Leader Schumer, and I thank my colleagues. Senator Klobuchar has been working very well on this, and we appreciate it.
I think that's about enough for what our purpose is here. So, all told, Donald Trump is already losing support. If there is anything at all that comes out of these Epstein documents that ties Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein in a way that is damning, or even slightly damning, people are going to start jumping ship. They're going to start getting the fuck out of Dodge, like a real kind of way. And I'm hoping that we just see a complete implosion and cratering of his support, and we see enough motivation behind an impeachment attempt. So we'll see exactly what happens. It's not damning already. I mean, it's in my mind, of course it's damning already, but there needs to be evidence that connects him. Not just implication, not just innuendo, not just some strings to put together. This is where this document dump is where we could actually find the drill that will pierce through all the bullshit. So we'll see. Because there's one line for MAGA, and it seems to be around the Epstein stuff. It's why Republicans earlier this year all voted in favor of releasing these documents after, months of Speaker Mike Johnson refusing to bring the bill to the floor. This was blocked in Congress, and they had to use a special arcane law to introduce it, to bring it to the floor for a vote. And then none of the Republicans, they weighed their options. I guess one Republican voted against it, but they weighed their options and they said, our loyalty to Trump or looking as bad as it's going to look for us to vote against this. And they chose their own political safety over Donald Trump's. And, I think that indicates where things stand on this particular thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is still a fucking nutcase. True. But she's absolutely a nutcase. She's not a good person, but she's leaving Congress and she's their number one fundraiser in Congress. She's leaving rather than continue to be associated with this administration. And that is that's not a good thing for her character, but it indicates that her self-interest means that she's going to take a step back and watch this entire Republican administration burn. And she's hoping she can then step back in later, I'm sure. But we're seeing the splintering of the coalition, and I think that is unambiguously a good thing, and I'm hoping that when these documents release, we see the breaking of it.
We have to strap the rats to the sinking ship. Bully the GOP back to going down with Trump.
Honestly, most of them are going to go down with Trump. We'll see. The mental image of just strapping the rats to the ship. I think her desire is to start a career as an influencer. I don't think so. I think she's going to get back into politics in like a couple years. Give her like, post 2028. Maybe she'll even run for something in 2028, but she's skipping out on the midterms because they are going to be a bloodbath. So, all that being said, I find this entire situation fascinating, horrible, a whole wide range of things, but like, I don't know, that National Review piece really caught me by surprise. If you guys got anything out of this, hit the like button. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Comments longer than 8 words really, really help out the show. Hit the subscribe button. And also, please consider getting involved with your local Dems. Radicalize them. Get involved with your local DSA. Make it more effective. Join our Discord. Reach out to Dragonfly for help with your local Dems. Reach out to Gamergy for help with your local DSA. Do the things. Do the things. Get involved, because this is how we build power, and this is how we stop these fucks, and this is how we hold them accountable. So do the shit. We all need to do our part. And finally, check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes. It is a non-tuck lingerie line, and we also tested it with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. Check it out. Link down in the doobly-doo, and I will see you all next time.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.